It's just 3 o'clock right here on News Central. And if you watched our show yesterday, you probably already know what the tea we have for you this morning is. And this tea, this tea is hot. Anyway, I want us to get straight into it because we have a really interesting conversation on Western media bias against Nigeria, really against the African continent, and how that impacts our ability to bring in investment dollars coming up on today's show. But here's what I'm talking about. Now, after being arrested and later released after Burna Boy filed a petition on the basis of defamation and cyber stalking, it seemed that Speed Darlington wasn't ready to let up on Burna. Speaking in an Instagram live session, I think it was on Tuesday, the first since his release, Speed Darlington disclosed that he does not have resentment towards the Grammy winner, emphasizing that he was tortured by the police. Here's the quote. "Let me just be direct. I have no beef with Burna Boy. I and Burna Boy are not quarreling, nor are we enemies. It is the Nigerian police that did me dirty. They are still withholding my phone at the moment, and I do not have access to it. Burna Boy felt like I was spoiling something for him. The amount of effort Burna puts into this case, I feel like I am even more successful than him." That was just on Tuesday. And I think that's where the comment of "I'm bigger than Burna" that people ran with actually came from. So that was his direct statement.
But, well, the tune seems to have changed. Just yesterday, Wednesday, Stanley Alieko and co. of Law Capital released an official statement for Darlington at Chapel, who we know as Speed Darlington. The statement emphasizes that Darlington values collaboration and healthy competition and has no personal discord with his colleague. It also reveals that the video in question, which has garnered attention, was intended purely for comedic purposes and did not anticipate the level of public reaction it received, and that any statements made in the video were not meant to harm or defame, again, his colleague, especially regarding comments that may have been interpreted as disrespectful towards Burna's mother. Additionally, it says that Darlington holds women and mothers in high regard, and any disrespect was unintentional or a misrepresentation of words. Now, moving forward, he says he's committed to setting a positive example and promoting peace, especially in how social media is used to address disputes. He's reached out to his colleague to clarify matters and extends an olive branch aiming to resolve the situation.
You know, isn't it funny?
What do they say when Hunter catches bushes?
You know, I know this is such an ecstatic moment for me. Because
Did you know that they're colleagues, though?
I wanted to. Catherine, that was low.
No.
But what are they supposed to be? Are they not? They're not friends. They're not associates. They're colleagues.
Colleagues.
Aren't they more acquaintances?
So have they never met?
I think
So they can't be acquaintances if
they can't even be acquaintances.
I think this is what we're talking about
industry.
yesterday. That's disrespect. What do you mean for comedic purposes? Somebody's entire career, you're posting about it, talking about it online and saying it's for comedic purposes.
But when did Speed Darlington tell us he was a comedian?
But the thing is, now that they're beginning to see pushback, they are starting to get sense. I'm sure when he went to these lawyers, they quickly called him to order that you better stop this nonsense you're doing until people know that there is boundaries. There are boundaries to be crossed and not to be crossed.
Yeah.
We can't say everything is for comedy purposes. Like me, I know that. I'm so pro-regulation.
Yeah.
Especially the way I see things on social media now. I am pro-regulation.
Yeah.
There are some comedy skits that children absolutely cannot be featured in.
But
it just does not make any sense to me.
But we like pushing boundaries.
Exactly.
We like pushing boundaries, but now nobody has really, you know, this John Tory alone kind of thing. Please, I'm begging you. It doesn't mean I don't mean it.
What did
all this I don't mean it
say?
saying,
God will do it.
yeah, God, please forgive
leave it
me.
to God.
Leave it to God, yeah.
Now that they know that people are not going to leave anything to God, if you defame someone and you do not have any evidence, you will be called out and you'll be prosecuted.
And I think
you will say that this thing will go down.
I think even, what would I call them now? Claimants should stop asking for apologies first before taking legal action. Because sometimes people now take advantage of that apology to douse attention. Okay, I'm sorry if that's what you want to hear. No, take them to court.
Because meanwhile, this thing stays up. Even though we talked about the Falanas yesterday, and we'll give you an update on that. VDM has been ordered to take it down, it's up because other people have reposted it. Other people have downloaded the video. So even if they take it down from the page, the main page that posted it, it remains. The internet does not forget.
No, it doesn't.
While I understand that Google does have a system in which you can remove certain information. Do you know how hard it is to get your information to get something removed from Google?
Yeah. Oh, tell me about that. How many years ago?
It's a lot.
I feel that even in the statement that he's putting out, I mean, Speed Darlington, I think he's even doing that with sass. He's doing that like he's doing that now with attitude, and he's not even.
No, the thing is, lawyer wrote and is very professional. They are just trying to douse the tension.
Yeah,
because the guy is. Let me know.
You see, so
I almost said something like.
I think it
Don't say it.
I think it has
Don't
become
almost say it, just don't
very
say it.
impossible to even remove something entirely from the net. And I'm trying to look at it through, let's say, the social media app Instagram, for example. If someone posts something, if I save it, even if the person deletes it, I still have it.
Yeah.
If someone posts something and I repost it, even if they delete it, I still have
And you
it.
can
So
continue to
I
share.
think, I think it's harder.
What was the lawyer telling us yesterday about continuous injury? So even though continuous injury may apply to the original person who posted it, what about the continuous injury when it comes to the people who continue to repost and use it for bans? And Nigerians, I know things are hard, and I know that we have a very special comedic flair. We find humor and bants in everything, but we are bantering about people's reputations. And we need to be careful, because what Speedy did was hold a bottle of baby oil and make implicit and implied allegations regarding how Burna Boy won his Grammy and his relationship with Diddy. And that's not something anybody should take lying down or without going back and having a reaction. I also like this lawyer because a few days ago, I think he was the one that released, there was a picture of him and Speed Darlington together, and then on his Insta stories, he said something about warning people about, don't think you want to just say, I go tell my lawyer. Avoid legal issues at all costs. That's not to say let people trample on your rights. But don't be foolish and get yourself involved in something you're going to be saying, I'll call my lawyer, and find yourself where people are right now.
And can you be intentional? Can you just take a moment to think? We are very emotional, sentimental people.
And impulsive.
And impulsive. Can we take a moment to think of the actions that our hands are? Because some people are fastest finger first. The hand is scratching them to do something.
I want to
Can you first of all think of what you want to do and the repercussions? Because if we do that intentionally, believe me, all this.
It's so bad that even when I see posts and I want to comment, sometimes I'm thinking through what I'm writing and I'm just deleting. That's why you don't see me make comments under any of these, pages that a lot of people get amebo from. Because once you say something, you have either endorsed or you are forcing,
sometimes adding fuel to the fire,
fuel to the fire.
A conversation.
Yes, a conversation.
I wish court verdicts or judiciary proceedings can be more televised or publicized, because I feel like people do not see repercussions enough. I'll use the Nathaniel Bassey case. We don't even know what happened at the end. I wish that we could see what happens to people who actually
can
so that people go at the back and say, please, I'm begging in Jesus' name.
Because a lot of people believe, last, they will drag it in court. After a while, everybody will say to you won't hear about it again. The fact that you're not hearing about it doesn't mean that somebody is not suffering in jail.
I always used to think, we had the conversation about defamation being civil, but with the clarity that the lawyer provided yesterday, there are criminal aspects to defamation, to slander, to libel. One is spoken, one is written, and now bringing in the aspects of defamation on social media, because of course that's the line that Burna Boy is towing with his petition, cyber stalking. And you're making, and it's not, let's not focus, it's not just the Diddy video. The Diddy video seemed to have been the needle that broke the camel's back. There were a series of videos.
Needling.
He was taunting him. I'm not Burna's biggest fan.
No.
But this one, I'm happy he went the legal route. Now, one thing that the lawyer said yesterday, we need to sanitize. Nigerians, we all talk about the fact that there's something wrong with our society. We want a better society. We point to the West. Do you think that he would have gotten away with it in the West? Do you think that somebody would be saying, leave it to God? And I'm thankful for growth, because I remember a story involving Burna Boy and somebody else he had issues with a few years ago, where he was reported that him and his guys went to rustle the guy. I'm thankful for growth that he has gone the legal route. Because guys, we talked the Burna we all used to know.
We talked about it yesterday. There's also when you want to protect your brand. You're
Yes, it's a
intentional
global
because you've
brand now.
spent years and time, investment in growing your brand. You want to keep it that way because of where you see yourself. A lot of people now in this industry, entertainment, don't have a vision. And that's one of the things that kills them. It's okay. You can get with the flow and go with, they say it makes you feel drunk and at the same time short-sighted. My own is that moving forward now, you have done this, so it's medicine after death. How do you expect Burna will respond to this?
And also the comments about his mother. So now the statement from the
didn't have
lawyers
to go
saying
there.
that none of it was intention, was misrepresented. People are not stupid. Whatever you're implying and whatever you're saying, people are
They
reading
know,
into
yeah.
the message. So don't come and say it was a misrepresentation of
And it
facts.
wasn't.
You were taken out of context. It was very clear what you were doing. I'm happy he has a lawyer that seems to that has a good
to know
head on
what
his
they're
shoulders.
doing.
But I also hope you listen to your lawyer.
Lawyer.
Because lawyers sometimes have clients, in especially cases like this,
That don't
will just
listen.
go on. They will continuously add fuel to the fire.
A lot of them are under the guise or under the or they don't know that you can't be covered by court of public opinion.
Yes.
When the judicial court, the courts
Yeah.
hold you accountable for something and you are found wanting by law,
Yeah.
you will answer to the court.
Yeah.
And
All these
unfortunately-
psychophans that are telling you, go, we support you, they won't
They'll
even
be
come for
nowhere.
your
You
trial.
You know that it's lonely at the top.
And
Lonely
also,
at the top.
a lot of people feel like
Lonely.
a lot of people think that they can just hire lawyers and tell them, look, I'm not paying you to tell me what to do. You're just here to defend me when I get in trouble. The lawyers will get their money at the end of the day. But it's not every case it's not everything they can bring you out of, unfortunately.
Do you think that Burna Boy should answer this olive branch that Speed Darlington has put out? And for me, unfortunately, I feel like it's often we leave the victims to be the ones to forgive.
Yes.
To be the ones who are the bigger
But was that
person.
even an olive branch?
That's the point, because even the statement clarifies that it's not an admission of guilt, but rather a formal response to the public
Exactly.
discourse.
Exactly.
And then you see an apology, you see excuses,
Voila.
you see I was
And
misrepresented.
he
If I
still
would
said,
say it,
he still
I
said
would
he's
just
more
say-
successful.
something
We
you
need
do.
someone to stay the cause.
I know.
Because in law, part of the things that make you able to talk about issues is because we have something we call case law.
And case
law,
precedents.
yes,
Yeah.
precedents are important to us lawyers because that's what we call things from like, oh, it happened in this case and this was the reasoning of the court. If they don't stay the cause and somebody falls, they really see a monumental for that. Imagine if Speed was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Wow. And he served his term. When he comes out,
Nobody will tell him. He will use his tongue to
even-
count his-
Even
Would
me
you
that
say he's a
agree
role
with her,
model, though?
I just really like 2 years in prison for
prison.
defamation.
Yes.
But yet we don't know how far that video has done, the damage to reputation.
Yeah.
But there's another case, right?
All right, talking about legal battles, we'll add that to the other high-profile story that we discussed yesterday, and that's the Falanas versus Very Dark Man, also which took an interesting turn. Now, in a letter dated October 14, 2024 by their lawyers, Olorunfemi Akinyemi and Taiwo Olonwale, Femi Falana and Femi aka Fowles, gave Bobrisky 12 hours from the receipt of the letter to make the formal retraction and apology as demanded, failing which their lawyers would proceed to seek appropriate legal remedies, including monetary damages against him for his incendiary defamation or defamatory statement. Now, this involves the recording that VDM released, which has to do with an alleged 10 million naira bribe. So yesterday, Bobrisky released or commented on his Insta story saying that he did not give Fowles or his dad any money for pardon. Here's a statement.
And I was thinking to myself, can you call that an actual statement, in fact? Because when you don't give it officially,
he needs
you
to
give
give
it
it.
on
I thought
Insta
it was
story.
written
That's
out.
not his statement.
I thought we had it.
That's why I said one of these cases must go down in history.
Okay, here it is. So Okuneye Idris, aka Bobrisky, didn't give Fowles or his dad any money for pardon. As a matter of fact, no penny was given to them. Have said this before, and I will say it again. The person that published an audio online should take full responsibility for what he posted in public. My lawyer will respond to any further information the public wants I'm filling in to know about this ongoing issue trending on social media. He also says, to whom it may concern, in reply to the 2 letters in circulation from the law firm of the Falanas, I'd like to state for the records and pending the official reply from my counsel, state for the avoidance of doubt that I, Okuneye Idris Olarewaju, aka Bobrisky, did not publish any defamatory statement or statements concerning the learned SAN and his son Fowles, and that it is in public domain pursuant to my solicitor. He's not one that's wrote this.
Of course.
Pursuant to my solicitor's letter dated the 27th day of September 2024, that I have denied any knowledge of what VDM published. I stand by my express denial and put the matter to strict proof and advise that whoever has been defamed should hold the publisher of the defamatory content responsible, and my fundamental right to privacy should please be respected. I like, again, distancing. Again, this reinforces what Barrister Evans Ufeli told us yesterday. It is not the people, quote unquote, heard on the audio. It is the person who published the audio. Even when we published a cutout of the conversation yesterday, we still have people saying that, oh, this guy is just a Falana stan. But it is the law. People are telling you guys the law, and you're still arguing.
Oh, no, we argue every day.
That's why I say.
I like that last statement that Bobrisky made. He said, before you drop anything on my page, please look for a lawyer to advise you.
Because he has gotten good advice. Whoever advised him knows exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, but they always wait for the tide to turn drastically.
It is
education.
But
it wasn't him that posted.
These things are novel to many of these people. You know, before, when it comes to defamation, but now the doors they've gone to knock is not an easy door to just close, because they know that they are powerful. They know they can take them up. So they are just doing like this. You know, when an elephant and an ant want to fight, you already know that it's like a lost battle. So even if the Falanas don't even bring out their big guns, one of the associate lawyers in chambers is enough to take them to court and win on this matter. So they are just being humane. With all this, we demand apology. They know that if we come down and they find out how much can Bobrisky pay? How much can VDM pay?
Of Lagos says he has money. He might spend the money on paying damages.
I came across his
money.
rant on social media, and he was saying, what is it about Bobrisky? Bobrisky does it. Why am I trending?
Who said that?
Bobrisky. Okay. And he kept on, he interspersed it with Yoruba. And he was just, what is it? And people were still laughing and commenting and saying, oh, Bobrisky is giving us a new TikTok sound. Do you understand that? So people don't even understand. We first go with how the emotions take us. And you are laughing and say, we are here for you. Don't worry, nothing can touch you.
Who said?
And they are goading you on, and they are pushing you to the edge.
No, look at it now. Look at all the months of supposedly Bobrisky spent in prison. How many of his fans were there? Where were the psycho fans? Everybody moved on to the next big thing, the next fun thing.
But he came back and garnered more.
No, there's no problem. What I'm saying is that people are just here for the fun. That's what I keep telling everyone. People are on social media, they're just here for the entertainment value.
So basically,
so you better don't dangle your life on the line in entertainment, because you might dangle your life to a point of death. And at the end of the day, you are so quickly forgotten. So,
and they move on to the
next big thing.
So I want to quickly advise everybody watching, right? A lot of times it feels like we're only talking about the celebrities, but you don't know how close you are to a lawsuit. If you feel like you can just stay in your house and type something, they would come for you. Well, one of my friends was saying that conversation we had about the promise to marry, she had no idea. Wow. And when she was watching it, she had to call the guy that she's been stringing along. She was like, look, I'm not saying I'll marry you. I'm serious, because even I didn't know about it, and I started thinking, I hope
in fact, I called one of my friends' attention. I called my friend's attention to a girl that did us dirty some years ago that we really had it right. We could have seen.
Excuse me, let's go to break.
Anyway, we'll be here.
As role models, though. Would you say this Speed Darlington is a role model?
We'll be here to see if Speed Darlington's extended olive branch is well received from Burna Boy. We'll also be watching to see what happens in the Falanas, Bobrisky and VDM controversy. Don't forget that the Nigerian Correctional Service suspended some officers regarding the Bobrisky's time in prison, and the House of Representatives had also started an investigation, and VDM testified or answered some questions in the chamber. But it is time to shift our focus somewhere. After the break, Claudine Moore, Managing Director of Allison Africa, joins us to explore how Africa is portrayed to the Western world and how its effects affects business. Stick around. So much interesting discuss.
All right, welcome back to Jasiri. Don't forget you can be part of the conversations we are having via social media platforms. We are at News Central TV. All right, so the perception of Africa in the global media, especially in the Western world, has been a long subject of contention. Reports indicate that Africa loses, guess what, a staggering $4.2 billion annually due to negative media coverage by Western outlets. Now, this media portrayal often focuses on conflict, poverty, disease and corruption, overshadowing the continent's immense potential and achievements. Now, as a result, foreign investment, tourism and global partnerships suffer, further deepening economic challenges.
Now, given this impact, the need for more homegrown African media platforms has become critical. These platforms would not only offer a more balanced and accurate narrative, but also help reshape Africa's image on the global stage. And today we'll be discussing how negative media coverage by Western outlets affects Africa economically and explore the potential of local media in countering this damaging narrative. And joining us is Claudine Moore. Of course, she's been exposed, but the managing director of Allison Africa, which recently released its inaugural Africa Business Cultural Intelligence Report. Claudine, welcome to Jessiri.
Thank you, beautiful ladies, for having me here today. It's great to see you all. Thank you.
She has been in the back end. She's been with us and listening to all the behind the scenes conversations.
Behind the scenes gist, yeah.
Welcome. Thank you so much, Claudine.
Thank you.
So let's start. You know, as Kathleen and Catherine, my two bilingual ladies. Kat said in her intro, we know that Western media portrayal often focuses on conflict, poverty, disease, war, famine, corruption, whatever it may be, when it comes to anything having to do with the continent. What are the most common misconceptions or biases that you have seen Western media perpetuate when it comes to Africa? And I think the addendum to that is, in the 21st century, in 2024, why do these narratives persist?
Yeah. I think we'll start with why do these narratives persist? And I think, quite frankly, to speak very candidly, the reasons range from laziness in finding out contemporary and up-to-date data and the information, and also on the other end of that spectrum, a bit more extreme, but to be quite frank, is racism. Anything Black or African is negative. So I think we are operating between the spectrum of those two possibilities. And I think when you're looking at Western media, I think in this report and first of all, this report that you're citing is from the Africa No Filter team, headed by Moki Makura. So kudos for her and her team for pulling that together. But there's a sentiment in that report that outlines that the word violence is used more when discussing African elections than any other elections in any part of the world, incling elections in other parts of the world.
Well, we almost saw a coup on January the 6th.
Exactly. And they refused to call it a coup. Exactly. I recently, so I'm a adjunct professor, and one of the things I do is that I talk about, sort of business in African markets. And recently I was talking to a university in Florida, and somebody asked the question, and they said, they referred to African governments as regimes. And I said, the word regime, why do we not say this? What does that mean? The word regime is always used for military, and it's used for also dictatorships, but it's specifically used for African governments. They use the word regime. But then we have a Biden regime, a potential Trump regime, a Harris regime. Yes. So it's also the words. Words are very powerful and should be used very carefully.
Let me piggyback off Tolu's question.
Yeah.
Because, years back, one of the things you will see on Western media, you will see starving African children, stark reality. You'll be wondering, where did that just come from? Yeah. And then it moved into that disgusting one. They showed thatched mud houses, thatched roof. In fact, you see some disparaging things said like, Africa is a country. Those kinds of things. I know that there's been extremes in the past. Would you say that in recent times, or let's say pushing into the 21st century, has there been any kind of shift? Because every time when I used to go abroad, I used to think, is this for raising funds? Yeah. So why are we seeing the extreme of what is not even commonplace? Would you say there's been any kind of shift at all?
I think there has been a shift, and there continues to be a shift, but there's still a long way to go. I think, certainly when, growing up in the UK, you're absolutely right. You'd see and even now when I go home, when I go to England, and I see at Christmas time, there's all these, images of children starving and,
come and save us.
Come and save us sort of narrative. Meanwhile, I've lived in Nigeria before. I lived here for 2 years. I had a better life living here when I lived here for the time I was here than in some aspects than I did living in America. So what I'm trying to say is there's not a balance, and that's what it is. Those pictures are not lies, because those pictures come from somewhere. So the reality does exist. But the issue is there's no balance. And without that balance, and that imbalance, I should say, is what causes these negative stereotypes. And it continues and it continues. So, you know, I remember, you know, when I've been to Nigeria at this point about 40 times in the last decade. I come here all the time, and I remember showing pictures to some friends, and they're like, "I don't see any animals. I don't see any giraffes. I don't see," and I'm like, "This is Lagos. You're not.
It's an urban center."
Yeah, and the things, it sounds comical to us.
Yeah.
But the reality is that's all that people see.
So, let me just.
It is changing, though. It is changing.
Yeah, I'm wondering that
slowly.
for us to see this change happen, where does the onus lie, really? Is it us that needs to change our narrative, or how they perceive us?
Well, I love your tagline, Africa First, right? Your tagline, Africa First, squarely puts Africa and Africans in the center of the story.
Absolutely.
And that's how it has been, you know, centuries ago. But with the world, the way the world has changed, it's always us in someone else's story rather than us at the center of the story. So I think we have to take responsibility for even what we all share ourselves on social media. We all have different echo chambers, different people following us. Whenever I'm in any country in the continent, and when I'm here in Nigeria, I'm always very specific about what I show. Not because I want to show only the good stuff, but because there's enough bad stuff. Let's show some good images and some good perceptions. But it is changing, which is positive, because, and I think with the rise of Afrobeats, the rise of international African leaders and actors, and just across the gamut, whether it's politics or whether it's entertainment, and people are seeing as more relatable. I think a lot of it, sometimes people look at Africa as this mysterious place.
The other.
Yeah, this other, exactly, other it. And it's, you know, who is mysterious depends on where you're sitting.
Yeah.
All right.
You're mysterious to us. We're not mysterious to ourselves.
Yeah.
I have a question, but I'm going to go off book now before I ask you the question I want to ask you, which has to do with numbers. What's your first genuine impression about Nigeria?
I came to Nigeria. I love that question. Thank you. My first trip to Nigeria was in 2011. The Nigerian Institute of Public Relations invited me to be a keynote speaker at their annual conference, and I was petrified because I'd never done a keynote speech at that time.
Okay.
But I was excited. I was excited about coming because, and my experience is a bit unique, I think, to other people. My background, I was born and raised in the UK, but my parentage is Caribbean. But I was brought up by Pan-Africanist parents who believed and said and taught me and my sisters that you're black, therefore you're African first. So you're African, and you're African first. You've got Caribbean parentage and you're born in the UK. So I always grew up knowing that I was an African woman. I mean, you see all 5 of us here, we're all African women, right? We're all black African women. Then I always knew that what I was seeing on the news was skewed. What I was seeing on media was skewed. I always knew that. But it was in 2010 when I first went to Ghana, my first trip to sub-Saharan Africa, and I saw how skewed the media was. Because I was like, this is Accra, this is nothing like what I'm seeing compared to what I'm seeing. So the next year I then came to Nigeria. So I already knew what you're seeing in the news, Claudine, already know is you experienced Ghana a few months ago. You already know it's going to be skewed. And when I came here, I was excited by the vibrancy of Lagos. I was excited by, you know, when I've worked in many different countries, and you do not get smarter, brighter, more resilient people than Nigerians. Like the smartest people. I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting. I'm not just saying that because I'm surrounded by Nigerians. I'm saying that because it's true. Like just smart, just resilient, innovative. And yes, there are lots of problems that prevent many people from really flourishing in the way that they want to and should be able to. But that doesn't stop talent and raw talent existing, especially to exist in the environment, which is a hard one.
Oh God! All right. So
and I'm not saying that just because I'm in Nigeria now.
I have to go back to my question, because the next question that wants to follow. Hey, if I could just share that question with you. But let's keep this train moving. So one of the statistics that I found interesting, and we talked about before we came on, was the fact that $4.2 billion is lost annually you see, from negative portrayal of Africa by the Western media. How does that make sense? When you say 4.2, how can you break it down for us in some form?
So how the authors of the report got to that specific data point, I don't know because I'm not the author of the report, but I can tell you anecdotally how that plays out in the business world. So you have, let's take someone in New York, Mr. CEO in New York, he's watching CNN or an international news channel in the morning, and he's seeing Africa, he's seeing coups, he's seeing violence, he's seeing corruption, and that's what he sees in the news in the morning. He then opens up his newspaper, and he opens up his newspaper and he reads about more corruption, more coups, more famine, more etc. And then he listens to a podcast, and they're talking about the same thing. So what I'm explaining here is that he's seeing constant negative portrayal. And then he gets an email, and the email is from, "Hi, I have an opportunity for you in Nigeria." And what he's seen about Nigeria for the entire morning, just using this as an example, has been negative coverage. He's a human being. So he's obviously going to have a negative perception. And then when he gets that email seeking investment, he's like, I've just seen on the media on the way to the office that there's chaos there. Why am I going to invest in your startup? Now, the reason I mentioned at the beginning that these negative perceptions stem from laziness to racism, in that CEO's instance, it could be laziness because ignorance to go further and say, even though I saw what I saw in the news today, let me get someone on my team to do some research because this startup looks interesting and maybe there's more to the story.
But is it on them? Because we can say that for investors, but the ordinary Westerner should not be burdened with that responsibility of, I heard this about Nigeria, but I don't want to believe that this is what it is, so let me go and dig deeper. Should it be on them?
No, you're right, and that's a brilliant point. It shouldn't be on them, but there's multiple ways of approaching this. So people have to be naturally curious, and they are naturally curious. When you go to school, if you're in a multicultural environment and your friend at school is Nigerian, or your friend at school is from another country, you're inclined to want to know more. With the rise of Afrobeats, for example, that's the biggest, cultural export that Nigeria has in terms of widespread sharing of your music, and that creates curiosity about your culture. And there's lots of cultural elements. I love the fact that with Afrobeats and Nigerian music, you're speaking in your native language. If other people understand, they do. If they don't, they don't. It's their business. But everybody loves it regardless. So, but then you have to think that people have their everyday lives, and information has to be easily fed to them. So then I think what that means is that when you have your own echo chambers, we all have, media has been democratized. We all have Instagram accounts, we have accounts on X, on Facebook, etc. We have friends around the world. It's up to us as well to share what we know. And then people would be more curious to know more. So, it's a mixture of both. The media does have a part to play, though, for sure.
Okay, so still talking about a skewed perception about the report, right? Unlike most reports on Africa, I find it quite interesting that this particular report does not focus on the traditional big five African economies, right? It goes beyond to provide a nuanced overview of the continent, like representing West, East, South, as well as North and Central Africa. So you have Kenya, you have Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Morocco, South Africa. But what's happening in, say, DR Congo and Morocco that landed them in that report?
Right. So at Allison, we decided to create what we called and it was our inaugural Africa Business Cultural Insights Report. And to your point, we decided, and as an agency, I will say, our tagline, and it's true as an agency, at Allison, we do things differently. So we decided how that would manifest in the report is to focus on all regions, North, South, East, and West. And when we were thinking about which countries in North and Central Africa to focus on, we chose DRC because DRC is the largest country in sub-Saharan Africa just by land mass. It has one of the fastest growing populations in the world. It also has a massive amount of natural resources, but the country is mired in a humanitarian crisis at the moment. And it's that juxtaposition where we wanted to highlight that because, of course, where there's opportunity, people are going to run. But we put in Allison's report, we wrote that if business is business, right? But if you're an organization that wants to go to a country like DRC, take a step and think about your corporate social responsibility, considering what is happening in that country. So that's why we chose DRC. With Morocco, Morocco is listed as one of the most easiest and favorable countries on their list of ease of doing business. Morocco ranks very high, and it's actually one of the highest in Africa. So that was one of the reasons. They also are building lots of stadiums at the moment because there are going to be lots of tournaments taking place in Morocco. And as a result of that, there's lots of infrastructure investment taking place in the country.
All right. Now that we're talking business in Africa, maybe we should now, target it a little more further. Africa's diverse business landscape is basically always expanding and evolving and very competitive. I think Nigerians are particularly more competitive. But many still see Africa as a country. Many of them do not have that overview of 54 different continents, countries spread across different landmass and everything. And the diversity of these people is there. We have cultural diverse, language, so many things divide us. So what are the changes that we're witnessing across the business landscape in Africa itself?
And isn't it just bizarre when people think like Africa's a country? It's just so bizarre. And again, to your point, it's just it bothers me because I just think it's just laziness to think that this mass is just a country. It's just bizarre. But some of the changes that are happening is women. There are more women entrepreneurs in Africa, across the continent and in specific African countries than in any other part of the world. There are a massive sway of tech innovation across the continent, and in particular fintech, and also in particular tech that's reaching those at the last mile. And I think that's really important because, you have your urban centers, you have your cities, which is great, but this technology can and should really seek to uplift and improve the lives of those at the last mile as well. The technology exists, it's just getting it to them. And that's some of the changes that we're seeing.
And I think this is a conversation about leaving no one behind as well.
Right.
At the end of the day, they will come to us. We know what's going on the continent as well. So as Lolo said, we're talking about 54 countries, 1.37 billion people. But the issue is that our story has always been told in a one-dimensional manner. And I've really been stuck on the fact that we lose 4.2 billion because of media bias. It's what it is.
And the thing about that is that this is where the work that we do in public relations and communications is so important, because you have organizations that are seeking partnerships, seeking investment, etc. But the example I gave you earlier of Mr. CEO going to work, if that Mr. CEO on the way to work, he also opened up a publication and saw an article about some of the incredible innovations in technology in Nigeria, he would have had in that morning 2 stories. He would have seen the story about, corruption, happening over an election, but he's also see a story about investment opportunities, innovation, etc. And that's where PR and communications is part of the answer to
changing the narrative.
And I think that's something that more African governments and organizations needs to take really quite seriously, because your organizations here that do take their PR and communications very seriously, you can see how that plays out in how they're perceived globally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get us to the women entrepreneurship, because that's a big conversation. But also remember that Africa has the youngest population in the world, with more than 400 million young people who are between the ages of 15 to 35. The truth of the matter is the world can no longer ignore us. They're going to come, but we need to make sure they come on our terms.
Absolutely.
I'm going to take Catherine's question now because of time, because I also want to make sure we touch on the media platforms, the homegrown platforms, and their role in all of this. But according to the World Economic Forum, women make up 58% of Africa's self-employed population, contributing around 13% of Africa's total GDP. And African women are rising in entrepreneurship and leadership, and the continent is witnessing a robust transformation, which is also being driven by its women, with sub-Saharan Africa having the world's highest rates of women involved in entrepreneurial activity. Now, across the countries you looked at, that is Kenya, Nigeria, DR Congo, Morocco, and South Africa, what would you say were the commonalities and sort of the situations that women entrepreneurs find themselves in these countries?
I think some of the commonalities include being forced by necessity and need. not being able to rely solely on one income for the household. And I think that's something that we're seeing all over the continent, but also all over the world. Like, this notion previously of a single income for a household, that's becoming increasingly a thing of the past for many, many markets. So it's really a need. And also, I think what I'd like to touch on with reference to that question is that more needs to be done to support these women.
Yes.
While more needs to be done. Whilst there is a lot being done, more needs to be done. So access to finance, women are still seen as a much riskier investment than their male counterparts. Which isn't true, because if you dig deep, if you look at women and men, we're the ones who are budget best when it comes to money. Let's just be honest.
We're actually a better return on investment.
Exactly. But again, perception.
Yeah.
So we're a perceived riskier investment. And also there needs to be more mentorship programs and incubator programs for women. At Allison, we have 2 programs. We have an internal women's leadership program to increase leadership within the organization of women. And externally, we have the Futurist Female Mentorship Program, which is Africa's first and only PR and mentorship program dedicated to African female tech founders. We've been doing it for 5 years. And we have had Salesforce and Google as partners. Yeah. Next week, we'll be releasing the winners of this year's 5th edition, and they come from across the continent. And they have brilliant tech startups and brilliant founders. All they want is an opportunity.
An opportunity is
and yes, I'm just enjoying the possibilities that you paint in such glowing pictures. Let's look at the media landscape generally now. There is an African proverb, I really like it. It says, until the lion tells the story, the hunter would always be the hero. And famed author Chinua Achebe said, if you don't like someone's story, then it's time that you write your own. Yeah. For too long, our stories have been told by the West. They are the ones telling our own stories to us. We're not we're made villains in our own story. And the narratives have been skewed in favor of how the West view us. Yeah. And now that we know that the lenses are clouded, it's time to take your glasses up and clean it a little bit. What does the report tell us about homegrown media that can challenge the Western narrative, and tell our stories as they are? Because we're multifaceted, we're complex, authentic, and most importantly, truly the ones that are truly reflective of who we truly are and where we're headed as a people.
Yeah, and that's why I was so excited when you guys invited me today, because you're an example of the change that needs to be seen.
Yeah. Did you hear that?
Yeah. And also, another thing you said was your tagline here is Africa first.
Absolutely.
Putting yourself at the center of the story. So one of the things that you're seeing is more and more, and as a PR agency, we actually work, as obvious, we work with media across the continent. We find the best results that we get is when we work with local networks, local platforms, because your audience is coming to you for authenticity. And your audience is, and whilst I know that misinformation is an issue generally around the world, they also, there's increasing lack of trust of global media because of the reasons mentioned in the other report. So they're looking to you to tell the truth, and they're looking to you to be authentic. And I think that's the power. Western and global media outlets, they have in recent years had local people being the heads of bureaus, but that needs to still, there's a long way for that to go. So for example, take TechCrunch, for example. Previously, the Africa Bureau Chief of TechCrunch was an American. And I know him personally, and he hadn't actually come to any African continent that much. Now, the person who's the bureau chief and leads that is Tage, and he's here in Nigeria. So he's on the ground. He's seeing the tech stories that are taking place. So he knows. And I think there needs to be more of that. You take a platform like the BBC. They knew they had to have BBC Swahili, BBC Pidgin, and it does way better than their BBC English. When we're working on local initiatives at the agency, so one of our clients, for example, is Bloomberg Philanthropies, and they do a lot of work on the ground, and they want their audience that is being directly impacted by their initiatives to be the one to hear and learn about them. And who do you go to? You'd come to a network like yourself or another local network. What makes Africa and all 54 countries across the continent, so brilliant of its people.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm working with like creatives and I'm doing like a presentation or anything like that, I always say to them, we're doing an Africa presentation, I always say to them, no sunsets and no animals. Because the first thing they're going to do in creating is exactly this beautiful
you see
sunset.
the elephant on the side.
Exactly. But I always tell them, no sunsets, no animals, because you're taking away the culture. You're taking away the people. And it's the people that make this continent.
Yes.
So I think that whenever there's an initiative that's impacting people, you need to go what the people are looking at first as being authentic, and that is local news media.
Yeah.
So
I really love this conversation about the African media landscape. I was in the room when Africa First was created as a tagline for News Central.
Great.
And the thing was, we, as you said, we want to prioritize our stories. We want to center ourselves in the story. So the perspective is ours, the narrative is ours, the voice is ours, and using all of that. So I want to ask, because I saw some interesting things in the report about media consumption, changing audience demographics, the rise of digital platforms and social media, as well as the diverse media landscape and global exposure in relation to the continent. If you can quickly do that, because we have one more question, but because of time. How do those all play together?
When the research team at Alison was putting together this report, what we found was that the media consumption across the continent and in the markets that we chose. So again, the markets that we focused on were Morocco, Kenya, Nigeria, DRC, and South Africa. It really did reflect the shift that's happening globally. People are getting more and more of their news from social media. People are looking more and more to digital platforms for their news and less the traditional, platforms, media. But what's interesting here in Nigeria and across the continent is the widespread use of smartphones. So there's still a market here for smartphones. There's a massive growth opportunity there. But also in terms of populations being connected, I think across the continent, we're still only like 48% digitally connected across the continent. So that means there's plus 50% more people to get online, which is the opportunity. Which is the opportunity. And the risk there along the opportunity is that then you're going to get all these people across the continent who are now going to be bombarded with content from other parts of the world. So you want them to always look at, have confidence in ourselves as Black African people to know that, yes, you're going to see all these great things around the world, but understand that what you have here is equally as good. It's just different. Yeah.
Okay. Final. Let's go.
Final question. I mean, it's been an incredible conversation so far. That's what happens on this table, guys. There's always incredible conversation, and we can go on and on. But we're running out of time. So quickly, let me see if I can wrap this up with a pretty bow on top. All right. So let me ask you, what would you say to those looking to invest in Africa?
Yeah.
And what can they take away from the insights on this report?
I loved around your studio. You have lots of amazing taglines.
Yes, we do.
And I saw one as I was walking through that said, shock everyone and make it happen.
Yes.
And I literally just saw that. So I would say, shock everyone and make it happen. I mean, I'll even take myself as an example. So as I mentioned before, I was born in the UK. My parentage is Caribbean, but I've always been brought up to know myself as an African person. And that seed for me planted an interest in doing work across this continent. And I just decided to come into Nigeria in 2011. I came, I saw what I saw. I built relationships here and I built a business here, a PR agency that I had for many, many years, over a decade before my agency was acquired by Alison to expand Alison into African markets. So I would say, if you have the desire to do business here, do it. Shock yourself, shock others, and just do it, because there are opportunities here. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Beneath these braids, I have lots of grey hair. So I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but God never told us anything would be easy. You do it anyway.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Oh, what a fantastic time we've had on the show. Want to say a very big thank you, Claudine.
Thank you for having me. This has been great. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful to meet you.
She is the managing director of Alison Africa. I want to say thank you so much for being our guest. It's been quite insightful conversation we've had today. I hope that the people that start to open their minds, so that more people can start to open their minds to Africa and all that we have to offer here. Anyway, I'm a woman of quotes today, so let me leave you with the words of Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She said, "The consequence of a single story is this: it robs people of dignity. It makes our recognition of our equal humanity difficult. It emphasizes how we are different rather than how we are similar. So that is all we have to say on Jasiri today. We'll see you again tomorrow. Think on those quotes.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.